Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Tommy, and today I'm going to show you how I made this drill press vise for small wooden parts. Whether it's your first time here, or even if you've been here before, welcome to 1 Minute Workbench. So the cool thing about this vise is not only are the jaws made out of wood, which helps prevent damaging the pieces you're working on, but the whole thing is made out of wood, so it makes it really lightweight and it makes it easy to shift around on the drill press table. Another cool feature is that this base here not only gives you some backing for the pieces that you're drilling into, but once it gets too chewed up, it can actually be replaced. These dowels here are removable. You just pop them out, pop a new piece in, and you're back in business. One nice thing about building a small wooden vise like this is that you can do it practically for free from scraps you have lying around the shop. I used plywood, but you could pretty much use anything you have on hand. These two parts are going to become the knob for the vise. The large part gets a counterbore that is the same depth as the head of a 5/16 carriage bolt. And the small piece gets a regular hole with a 5/16 diameter. I rounded the sharp corners and feathered the edges on my homemade disc sander. You could do this with an orbital sander or even by hand, but it's a lot more fun with a disc sander. I compressed the square neck of the carriage bolt into the smaller piece using a flat washer and a hex nut. Then I removed the hex nut and the washer. I filled the counterbore with epoxy, set the head of the carriage bolt into the epoxy, and clamped them together. The epoxy will make sure the carriage bolt's square neck stays compressed in the smaller piece. When I started laying out my marks for the pins, I placed them exactly 1/2 inch in both directions from all of the corners. This just makes it so that when it comes time to replace the sacrificial backing, I'll know exactly where to put the holes without having to think about it. After I had my marks drawn, I centered the backing on the clamp's base and added a couple of temporary pins so I'd be sure the holes were perfectly aligned. I drilled holes that were a perfect size for the pins. Then I removed the backing from the base and enlarged the holes in the backing. Enlarging the holes in the backing just makes it easier for when it comes time to install the backing on the base. I cut the pins, which are just wooden dowels, down to their final size and tested the fit of the backing on the base. After that, I started laying out the rest of the components. I decided on pre-drilling the holes before any of the glue up. This meant I had to make a lot of marks. One nice thing about using a material with good consistency, like plywood, is that the marks are easy to make. This piece will be the back side of the moving jaw, and this counterbore will hide the hex nut that secures the jaw in place. It also gets a 5/16 through hole so it can attach to the carriage bolt. This piece will be the front side of the moving jaw, and it also helps to conceal the hex nut. 3 pieces get a 1/4 inch hole, which will later be tapped with a 5/16 18 bit. I glued up the 3 pieces without a hole and the 3 with a 1/4 inch hole and set them aside to dry. I temporarily pinned the 2 components that would make up the moving jaw together, laid out some marks, and then drilled pilot holes for the screws that are going to hold these 2 parts together. Then I added the screws. I wanted all the corners to be slightly rounded, but I also wanted them to match just for aesthetic reasons. So I used a marker as a guide to draw the matching curves. Rounding the edges took just a short amount of time using the disc sander. I then set out to secure the ends to the base platform. I secured the ends of the vise to the base with glue and pins, and then I started laying out marks for my screws. I added as many screws as I could reasonably fit into the space available. The nature of how the vise works puts a lot of force on the ends, so I just wanted to make sure that it was going to be robust enough to withstand the pressure. I wound up putting 6 screws in each end for a total of 12. I threaded the 1/4 inch hole with a 5/16 18 tapping bit and then burnished the ends of the dowel pins with the sander. I then checked the fit for the sacrificial insert. It was too snug, so I lightly sanded the ends until it was a good fit. I used 150 grit sandpaper to ease the sharp edges and sand all of the surfaces. Then I added 6 coats of polyurethane. Even though it's not required for the type of poly I use, I always sand in between the coats because I wind up with a nicer finish. Here, I'm distorting the threads near the end of the carriage bolt so that the hex nut will have some resistance. I probably should have waited till I threaded it through the hole, but it didn't damage the threads in any noticeable way. To assemble the moving jaw, I added the back portion, added the hex nut, set it in place using the resistance created by the distorted end threads, and then added the front. I then finished off the assembly by sliding the sacrificial insert into place and then secured it there with the dowel pins. The vise has more than enough clamping strength, and unlike my metal drill press vise, it's not going to damage all of the small wooden parts I use on my projects. Up until now, I've just been using a spring clamp to hold small parts. The problem is that sometimes the spring clamps don't provide enough force to keep the part in place, so I'm really excited to have something that's more robust. Hey, thanks for watching. I really hope you liked this video. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe and check out all my other cool videos. I'd love to hear what you think about this drill press vise in the comment section below, and if you have any quick questions you want answered, hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And until the next time I see you, I hope you have fun building something.